There are millions of kids out there starving to play in an NBA game that are more qualified than his stats show.
Right after Stephen A. Smith said that about Bronny James, things escalated fast. LeBron clapped back.
But when you take it and you get personal with it, it's my job to not only protect my damn household, but protect the players.
And Bronny, he took it way further. The drama spilled onto IG Live, where Bronny delivered a bold, straight-up threatening message that left fans stunned.
Listen up.
Let's break down exactly how it all went down. How Stephen A. Smith's crusade against Bronny James began. Bronny James has had enough, and now he's coming for Stephen A. Smith. It's wild. He's accusing Stephen of constantly talking about basketball when, in Bronny's words, you never even touched a court. But this feud didn't just start overnight. It's been simmering for months. Bronny James, born on October 6, 2004 in Akron, Ohio, entered the NBA as a second-round draft pick by the Los Angeles Lakers in 2024, making history as part of the first active father-son duo in NBA history alongside LeBron. From the moment his name was called on draft night, the young James found himself under a microscope unlike any rookie before him. The basketball world watched with anticipation, skepticism, and in some cases outright hostility as he prepared to step onto courts where his father had already cemented himself as one of the greatest players to ever touch a basketball. The early signs were ominous. Bronny's first 13 games showed averages of 0.3 points, 0.3 assists, and 0.4 rebounds, shooting 1/16 from the field and 0.7 from three-point range. These weren't just disappointing numbers. They were the kind of statistics that fuel narratives, create controversy, and provide ammunition for critics looking to make their mark in the unforgiving world of sports commentary. Enter Stephen A. Smith, the ESPN commentator whose career has been built on passionate rants, controversial takes, and an uncanny ability to generate headlines through his bold pronouncements. Smith, known for his outspoken opinions and willingness to engage in heated debates, saw in Bronny's early struggles not just a story, but an opportunity to address what he viewed as a fundamental problem with the NBA's meritocracy. The first shot fired in this media war came on January 29, 2025, when Smith went on a viral rant criticizing Bronny's readiness for the NBA and pleading with LeBron to stop this, implying Bronny's presence in the league was due to nepotism. But this wasn't just any criticism. This was a calculated, systematic dismantling of a young man's dreams, delivered with the full weight of ESPN's platform behind it.
I am not a person that had a problem with Bronny James being on the court for the season opener with LeBron James. That was a phenomenal moment to see a father on the court with his son who has NBA aspirations playing together for the first time in NBA history. The Griffeys in baseball, Ken Griffey Sr. and Jr. were in attendance for it. It was a special moment. My position has always been that should have been the only moment we saw Bronny James in a Lakers uniform this season, because he's not ready.
The words cut deep, not just because of their content, but because of their timing and delivery. Here was a young man, barely 20 years old, trying to carve out his own identity in a sport where his father's shadow loomed larger than life. And one of the most influential voices in sports media was essentially telling the world he didn't belong. But Smith wasn't content to stop there. His criticism became more pointed, more personal, as he continued his assault on what he perceived as preferential treatment.
Bronny James has played in 13 NBA games. Ladies and gentlemen, he's averaging 0.3 points, 0.3 assists, and 0.4 rebounds. He shot 1 for 16 from the field in his NBA career and 0 for 7 from three-point range. And he's playing in the first quarter of an NBA game? Really?
The statistics were damning, yes, but the way Smith presented them felt like a public execution. Each number was delivered with theatrical emphasis, each percentage point wielded like a weapon designed to not just critique performance, but to question the very legitimacy of Bronny's presence in the league. What made Smith's attacks particularly cutting was his strategic approach to the criticism. Rather than simply questioning Bronny's abilities, he framed his arguments around the broader issue of fairness and meritocracy in professional sports.
He can't go into the G League and average 20, 25 and stay there until he's ready? Because he's LeBron's son, you know how they're gonna judge him. And before anybody wants to jump on me, remember, I never saw Bronny James play until he showed up in the NBA. and the G League.
This wasn't just criticism. It was character assassination disguised as sports analysis. Smith positioned himself as the voice of reason, the defender of fairness, while simultaneously destroying a young man's confidence and public perception. The commentator's words carried weight not just because of his platform, but because they tapped into a broader skepticism about nepotism in professional sports. The psychological impact on Bronny was evident to anyone watching closely. Here was a young man who had already overcome significant health challenges, including a cardiac arrest during a workout at USC, who had worked tirelessly to reach the professional level, only to have his every move scrutinized and his legitimacy questioned on national television. Smith's campaign against Bronny wasn't limited to a single rant. It became a recurring theme in his commentary, a reliable source of content that generated clicks, views, and engagement. The ESPN personality seemed to relish the controversy, often returning to Bronny's struggles as evidence of larger problems within the NBA's power structure.
There are millions of kids out there starving to play in an NBA game that are more qualified than his stats show.
The words were designed to sting, and they did. They painted Bronny not just as an underperforming player, but as someone who had stolen opportunities from more deserving athletes. It was a narrative that resonated with certain segments of the basketball community who viewed his presence in the league with suspicion and resentment. But perhaps the most insidious aspect of Smith's attacks was how he framed them as concern for Bronny's well-being.
And what I'm saying is, if you see a son being exposed to things they may not be ready for, when do you wrap your arms around them and say, all right, now's not the time?
This wasn't just criticism, it was psychological warfare disguised as paternal concern. Smith positioned himself as caring more about Bronny's development than his own father did, a particularly cruel twist that added personal insult to professional injury. The ESPN commentator even went so far as to use boxing analogies to make his point, comparing Bronny's situation to that of Marvis Frazier, the son of Joe Frazier, who was put in the ring against heavyweight champion Larry Holmes before he was ready.
And I used Marvis Frazier, the son of Joe Frazier. Go back and look at the highlights. He went into the ring against heavyweight champion Larry Holmes, who had one of the best jabs and one of the best right hands in boxing history. And I remember Larry Holmes being interviewed and saying, ain't no kid with 10 damn fights beating me. That's what he said. And then went in there and beat him in the first round.
The analogy was devastating in its implications. Smith wasn't just questioning Bronny's readiness. He was suggesting that LeBron James, one of the greatest basketball minds in history, was setting his son up for public humiliation and potential long-term damage to his career and psyche.
That's all I'm saying. With LeBron, the best of intentions, wonderful father by all accounts. I'm not casting any aspersions on him. I'm saying, that's your son, bro. You know the game of basketball. He ain't ready yet. Why put him in that position?
The carefully crafted nature of Smith's attacks made them all the more damaging. By couching his criticism in concern and respect for LeBron's parenting, he created a narrative that was difficult to counter without appearing defensive or unreasonable. It was masterful manipulation disguised as sports commentary. As the weeks passed and Smith's criticism continued, the pressure on the James family intensified. Every game became a referendum on Bronny's legitimacy. Every missed shot a validation of Smith's arguments. Every struggle a reminder that one of the most powerful voices in sports media had essentially declared him unworthy of his position. The impact extended beyond just Bronny himself. LeBron James, who had always been protective of his family and particularly sensitive about criticism of his children, found himself in an impossible position. As one of the most scrutinized athletes in modern history, he understood the nature of media criticism, but watching his son become the target of sustained attacks tested even his legendary composure. When LeBron James finally had enough, the tension that had been simmering beneath the surface for months finally erupted into public view on March 6, 2025, during a Lakers game against the New York Knicks. What transpired that evening would become one of the most talked about moments in recent sports media history, a confrontation that perfectly encapsulated the raw emotions and high stakes involved in this escalating feud. The scene was set at Crypto.com Arena, where the Los Angeles Lakers were hosting the New York Knicks in what should have been a routine regular season game. But nothing involving the James family and Stephen A. Smith had been routine for months. The ESPN commentator was in attendance, likely expecting another opportunity to observe and potentially critique Bronny's performance, but he was about to become the story himself in a way he never anticipated. A viral video captured LeBron confronting Smith courtside, telling him to stop talking about my son, a moment that instantly became one of the most shared clips in basketball social media history. The confrontation was brief but intense, a father's protective instincts overriding any consideration of public relations or media diplomacy. The video showed LeBron approaching Smith with unmistakable purpose, his body language conveying months of accumulated frustration and anger. This wasn't a casual conversation between a player and a media member. This was a father who had reached his breaking point, watching his son being systematically torn down by one of the most influential voices in sports media. What made the confrontation even more significant was the calculated nature of how it unfolded. LeBron later revealed in an interview with Pat McAfee that the encounter was not spontaneous, suggesting that the Lakers superstar had been planning to address Smith's attacks for some time. This wasn't a heat-of-the-moment outburst. It was a deliberate decision by one of the most media-savvy athletes in history to take a public stand.
Never would I ever not allow people to talk about the sport, criticize players about what they do on the court. That is your job, to criticize or to, be in a position where, okay, if a guy's not performing, that is all part of the game. That's all part of the game. But when you take it and you get personal with it, it's my job to not only protect my damn household, but protect the players.
LeBron's words revealed the depth of his frustration and the principled stance he was taking. This wasn't about shielding his son from legitimate criticism. It was about drawing a line between professional critique and personal attacks. The distinction was crucial, and it highlighted how Smith's commentary had crossed boundaries that even seasoned athletes found unacceptable. The aftermath of the courtside confrontation sent shockwaves through the sports media landscape. For years, Stephen A. Smith had built his reputation on bold takes and controversial statements, but he had rarely found himself on the receiving end of such direct personal pushback from one of the sport's biggest stars. The tables had turned, and suddenly the media personality found himself being scrutinized as intensely as he scrutinized others. Smith's response to the confrontation was immediate and characteristically defiant. Rather than backing down or moderating his stance, he doubled down on his criticism while simultaneously playing the victim. His reaction on First Take the following day revealed just how deeply the confrontation had affected him, despite his attempts to project confidence and control.
LeBron James never addresses that with anybody. For some reason, no one ever asked him about that. Wasn't it you who said that Bronny James was better than some players in the NBA right now before he was even drafted?
Smith's counterattack was strategic and personal, attempting to shift the narrative back to LeBron's role in what he perceived as Bronny's undeserved position in the NBA. But his response also revealed something else, a deep-seated resentment toward LeBron that went beyond basketball analysis and into personal territory. The ESPN personality's most revealing moment came when he directly accused LeBron of lying about the nature of his criticism.
LeBron James went on national television yesterday and lied. He said that I have no problem with you talking about the game. What did I say about Bronny James other than at the time he wasn't ready? That was it. I said nothing else.
But Smith's claim of innocence rang hollow when examined against the full context of his commentary. His criticism of Bronny had been relentless, systematic, and often cruel in its delivery. The suggestion that he had simply stated Bronny wasn't ready was a dramatic minimization of months of sustained attacks that had gone far beyond constructive criticism. Perhaps most tellingly, Smith's response revealed what many suspected was the real source of his animosity toward the James family.
This man is in his feelings. I wonder why. Could it be because I don't believe you're the GOAT? Because I'll never believe you're the GOAT? Because I have you number 2 at all times? Do I have to have ESPN and First Take put up the ticker tape right now and say, yo, could you put that up there, please? Great father, great husband, great philanthropist, great businessman, great director, great producer, great host, great basketball player, great leader.
The rant revealed the petty nature of Smith's grievances. His attacks on Bronny weren't really about basketball analysis or concern for the integrity of the game. They were about his frustration with LeBron's refusal to acknowledge him as the greatest player of all time. Smith's ego, bruised by years of LeBron's indifference to his opinions, had found an outlet in attacking the superstar's son.
But it ain't enough, because one thing matters to him and one thing only, and that's him being recognized as the greatest of all times. Well, you're not in my book. That belongs to Michael Jordan.
The Michael Jordan comparison became a central theme in Smith's response, as he launched into a detailed statistical breakdown designed to diminish LeBron's legacy. But the timing and context made it clear that this wasn't about objective analysis. It was about using his platform to settle personal scores and inflict maximum damage on someone who had dared to challenge him publicly.
Yet, still in all, here we are in the year 2025, decades after Michael Jordan has retired, while LeBron James is still playing. And LeBron James is still 2 titles shy of Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan is 6. LeBron James has 4.
The statistical barrage continued for several minutes, with Smith methodically comparing every aspect of LeBron's career to Jordan's, always ensuring that LeBron came up short in the comparison. It was a masterclass in character assassination disguised as sports analysis, revealing the depth of Smith's personal animosity toward the Lakers superstar. But perhaps most damaging was Smith's suggestion that LeBron had orchestrated the entire confrontation for media manipulation.
But looks right up to the camera that's behind us that I never saw, who was filming it all along. The man orchestrates stuff. The man will smile in your face, and he's got something behind his back, ready to stab you in it.
The accusation was particularly insidious because it attempted to reframe LeBron's protective actions as calculated media manipulation. According to Smith's narrative, even a father's instinct to defend his son was really just another example of LeBron's supposed duplicity and hunger for attention. As the war of words escalated, it became clear that this wasn't just a disagreement about basketball analysis. It was a deeply personal conflict between 2 powerful figures in the sports world, with Bronny caught in the crossfire. The young player found himself not just defending his own performance and legitimacy, but watching his father's legacy and character being attacked on national television. The timing of Bronny's improved performance added another layer of complexity to the narrative. On March 20th, 2025, he scored 17 points against the Milwaukee Bucks, and on March 24th, 2025, he achieved a career-high 39 points in a G League game. These improvements were significant not just for Bronny's development, but because they undermined Smith's central argument about his readiness for professional basketball.
I might have been wrong. Are you listening, LeBron James? Are you listening, James family? Are you listening, Rich Paul? Are you listening, all of you people? Because here's my position.
Smith's admission that he might have been wrong was significant, but it came too late and with too little sincerity to undo months of damage. The ESPN personality's grudging acknowledgement of Bronny's improvement felt more like damage control than genuine reflection, especially given the personal nature of his attacks on the entire James family. But the damage had been done. Months of sustained criticism, personal attacks disguised as analysis, and public humiliation had taken their toll. The pressure had been building not just on Bronny, but on the entire James family, creating a powder keg of resentment and frustration that was about to explode in an unprecedented way. The media coverage of the feud had become a feeding frenzy, with every interaction between the James family and Smith being dissected and analyzed. The sports world was watching a real-time destruction of relationships, a breakdown of the traditional boundaries between athletes and media that had serious implications for how future conflicts might unfold. And for Stephen A., LeBron was just another name added to the long list of high-profile figures he's taken aim at. Stephen A. Smith's history of controversial attacks. Stephen A. Smith's history of criticizing others spans over a decade, with documented instances of controversial remarks dating back to 2008. His approach to sports commentary has consistently involved not just analyzing performance, but attacking character, questioning integrity, and making statements that often cross the line from professional criticism into personal assault. The pattern began to emerge publicly in 2008 when Smith called Kwame Brown a bona fide scrub after the Lakers traded him for Pau Gasol. While the comment became infamous and was later regretted by Smith himself, it established a template for the kind of personal, humiliating criticism that would become his trademark. The attack on Brown wasn't just about basketball analysis. It was designed to destroy the player's confidence and public perception. What makes Smith's history particularly troubling is how his attacks have consistently targeted vulnerable figures in the sports world. His criticism rarely focuses on established superstars who have the platform and confidence to fight back effectively. Instead, he has shown a pattern of going after young players, struggling athletes, and those who lack the media savvy or public support to defend themselves adequately. In 2010, Smith defended Floyd Mayweather against domestic battery allegations, accused Mayweather's ex-wife Josie Harris of fabricating abuse for money, and stereotyped accusers as gold diggers. This wasn't sports commentary. It was victim blaming disguised as analysis, showing a willingness to wade into serious social issues with inflammatory and harmful rhetoric. The most damaging example of Smith's pattern came in July 2014, when he suggested that women may provoke domestic violence while discussing the Ray Rice Rice case. The comments were so egregious that ESPN suspended him for a week, but the incident revealed the depth of his willingness to make inflammatory statements for attention, regardless of the social harm they might cause. In March 2015, Smith suggested that Chip Kelly's roster moves with the Philadelphia Eagles might be racially motivated, implying racism without evidence, and using his platform to damage a coach's reputation based on speculation rather than facts. This established another pattern in Smith's commentary: the willingness to make serious accusations without substantiation when it served his narrative purposes. His sexist comments about the Women's World Cup in June 2015, where he joked about female soccer players not wanting to mess up their hair, further demonstrated his pattern of using his platform to demean and diminish athletes based on gender stereotypes rather than legitimate analysis. The pattern continued with his treatment of other NBA players and their families. In 2016, Smith chastised Ayesha Curry for accusing the NBA of rigging games, suggesting she should model herself after LeBron James' wife rather than speaking her mind. Once again, Smith was targeting a family member of a prominent athlete, showing the same pattern of behavior that would later manifest in his attacks on Bronny James. His criticism of Colin Kaepernick in 2017 for not voting in the 2016 election, while simultaneously supporting the #ActNe movement, showed Smith's tendency to attack athletes for their personal choices while claiming to support their causes. It was another example of his pattern of having it both ways, supporting movements when convenient while attacking the individuals involved when it generated more controversy. Smith's reaction to J.R. Smith's mistake in Game 1 of the 2018 NBA Finals was particularly telling, as he responded with "stay off the weed," making assumptions about the player's personal life and using drug stereotypes to explain poor performance. This wasn't analysis, it was character assassination based on harmful stereotypes. Perhaps most revealing of Smith's pattern is his treatment of Kevin Durant, which mirrors many aspects of his later attacks on the James family. In May 2017, Smith blasted Durant as arrogant and disrespectful to NBA fans after Durant told fans not to watch if they didn't like the game. The attack was personal and designed to turn fans against Durant rather than address the substance of his comments. The conflict escalated in October 2024 when Smith questioned Durant's leadership with the Phoenix Suns, leading to Durant calling Smith a clown on November 3, 2024. The exchange revealed Smith's pattern of pushing until he gets a reaction, then using that reaction to generate more content and controversy. Throughout his career, Smith has shown a particular obsession with the New York Knicks, using his fandom as an excuse for increasingly unhinged rants about the team's performance. His frequent tirades about the Knicks' poor performance and management have included specific instances in 2019, 2022, and 2025, often crossing the line from fan frustration into personal attacks on players and management. A particularly egregious example came after a 2025 playoff loss to the Indiana Pacers, where Smith's rant was so over the top that it became a social media meme, highlighting how his commentary had devolved into performance art rather than legitimate analysis. What makes Smith's pattern particularly insidious is how he frames his attacks as concern or analysis while delivering them with maximum personal damage in mind. His criticism of Bronny James followed this exact template, couching personal attacks in language about development and readiness while systematically undermining the young player's confidence and public perception. The ESPN personality has consistently shown a willingness to attack family members of athletes when it serves his purposes. His treatment of Ayesha Curry, his later attacks on Bronny James, and his pattern of bringing personal relationships into his commentary reveal a commentator who recognizes no boundaries between public and private life when it comes to generating content. Smith's defense of his controversial statements typically follows a predictable pattern: initial defiance, followed by grudging acknowledgement when pressure mounts, then return to the same behavior patterns within months. His admission that he might have been wrong about Bronny James followed this exact template, coming only after Bronny's improved performance made his earlier criticism look foolish. The most troubling aspect of Smith's pattern is how it has been rewarded by the media industry. Rather than facing consequences for his inflammatory rhetoric, he has been promoted and given larger platforms. His $100 million ESPN contract renewal in 2025 came despite decades of controversial statements, suggesting that the network values controversy over responsible journalism. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed watching this video, click on one of the boxes playing on your screen to watch more similar content.